very first time, and I'm doing it because I really wanted to get on here and talk to you about getting your money right, getting your money together as a creative. And if you're wondering, Charla, are you doing this because literally the country is falling apart and the industry is turbulent and all this other stuff? Yes, and yes, and yes. I feel like yes, everything's going kind of bananas, but at the same time, there's never a better time than the present to get your money together. So I feel like this is the right time to do that. I don't want you stressing if you don't have to stress when there's already so much other things to stress about. I also feel like the more you get your money together and get your money right, the more space it creates for flow and for creativity and for you to actually focus on the work that you want to do instead of having this ongoing stress in the back of your mind about what isn't going right when it comes to your money. Another reason why I feel like it's really important as a creative to get your money right and get your money together is because you are a business person whether you like it or not. When you decide that you want to go into screenwriting or writing or any kind of creative career and do that for a living, whether you like it or not, you become a business person until you can get someone to help you with that, with the business side of your creativity, of your creative work. I had to learn this the very hard way. I grew up in a paycheck to paycheck household. I grew up in an immigrant household. So not only was there a financial illiteracy when it came to class, there was also a financial illiteracy when it came to immigrants coming to the country, not really knowing how money works in the country, on top of not knowing how money works in general, how to be financially solid, how to be financially literate. So growing up, I used to think that being like all you needed to be okay financially was to make a steady paycheck. A steady paycheck meant that I was rich. It meant that I was doing fine. It meant that I was financially stable. Little did I know that financial stability has less to do with what you're making and more to do with what you're keeping. And that's really when the light bulb went off for me. And I learned a really important lesson too. When I first started as a TV writer, I remember I was so excited because it was the most money I've ever made. I was making so much more money. I had been so broke for so long. And I looked up one day, I think it was like 4 or 5 years into my career as a TV writer, and I had been earning a steady income at that high income that I'd never had before. And my student loans were not paid off. I still had credit card debt. I didn't have any real significant savings. And it made me realize that, yeah, it didn't matter that I was bringing in money if I wasn't following and paying attention to how much of it I was keeping. So that was a huge lesson for me. It really like, of course, if you're making minimum wage, if you're not making a lot of money at all, if you, of course, it's extremely difficult to get on financially stable ground when that's the case. But it still remains true that financial stability is about how much you're keeping and not just about how much you're making. But of course, if you're making a really low amount of money, it's super difficult. That is for sure. So, I want to talk to you about the four basic steps of financial stability. Now, again, I'm not a financial expert in any way. I'm just a creative, I'm just a writer and a comedian. And I've just had to learn the hard way how to manage my money. But like I've said, if I've talked to you, if you've paid attention to my channel at all, if you've paid attention to the Working Writer podcast at all, then you know that you are a business person once you step into Hollywood, and it makes the most sense. It gives you the best advantage if you have basic financial literacy. So that's what we're going to do today in today's live video. I'm just going to give you the 4 steps that give you basic financial literacy, so that you can get on the right footing, get your money right. The world is crazy. It'll always be crazy to a certain extent. I feel like it's never too soon or too late to get your money together. So let's talk about it. Let's do it. The first step to financial stability is having an emergency fund. So If you have no money right now, if you have $0 in your savings account right now, you're really keeping yourself in such a stressful situation. You're putting yourself in such a stress filled life by having no savings. And I feel like a lot of us have that level of basic financial understanding where if you don't have any savings, you know that you're in a pretty stressful situation. And I'm sure a lot of people who watch this have heard of that statistic about the majority of Americans not being able to afford a $500 emergency. And this is exactly the step that's going to make you prepared to afford a $500 emergency. Because if you have zero emergency fund, your first step is saving $1,000. Um, oh, interesting. Your first step is saving $1,000. And after that, your next step is saving 1 month. So the important thing about saving $1,000 is that it is enough money to save to cover your average um emergency, to cover your average like big expense like a tire or maybe like a small hospital visit or something like that. So the other thing I like about, having like levels for the emergency fund is that it gives you like little milestones to hit with your emergency fund. So if you have $0 in savings, your first step is to save $1,000. And then after you saved $1,000, you can move on to paying off debt. But I highly recommend that as a creative, especially in the field that we're in, we know that we have jobs that don't last the full year. We go from project to project. So you want to make sure that you have, I would say, at least 3 months of savings in your emergency fund at all times. And that I think that's basic for any kind of creative who's working on a project by project basis. You can, after you get 3 months of emergency fund saved, I would move on to 6 months. And then the real gold standard for me of having an emergency fund is 1 year, because we really don't know what could happen. We really don't know. Like, I just feel like things can be so unpredictable as a creative, and in our industry, and also the way that the world is going right now. It just feels that 1 year not only gives you a peace of mind, but it also gives you the opportunity that if you want to step away, or if you need to step away for an extended period of time, you have that flexibility to do that. It's a huge goal. It takes some sacrifice. If you want to get to a year of savings, it might require you really pulling back on some things for a little while, if that's what you want to reach. But I think to a certain extent, each and every one of those emergency fund goals might take some sacrifice for most of us. I know it did for me. It took changing my attitude. It took changing my habits. It took getting really upset and angry about the place that I was in financially, the fact that I had been working for years and I didn't have any more financial stability than when I had started. So it takes like some gumption. And I say, if that's what it takes, then get there. Get upset, get annoyed at where you're at, and get fired up about saving 1K, then 1 month, then 3 months, then 6 months, then a year. And I feel like every time you get to that next level, of savings, it feels so good. It feels so amazing. And I support it. I support you. I hope you get there. The next step to financial stability, step 2, is of course paying off debt, because the less debt that you have, the more leverage you have to take out loans, because it increases your credit. It reduces your stress because you're not indebted to a certain to that high amount. um and of course, when you don't owe anybody, what you have left is money. um Also, a lot of people will talk about, wanting to invest before they actually pay off their debt. And I like to ask people, you know let's say that you are investing in a regular index fund and you get 10% off of that index fund, but you have debt that's at 20% interest. So you are basically eliminating any interest that you would get from that index fund anyway by not paying off your debt. It always makes more financial sense. It makes more sense mathematically. It's like literally do the math. It doesn't make sense to start investing when you have a ton of debt. It actually makes you, it puts you in a more, it puts you in a worse position. It makes you like more of a sitting duck when it comes to being financially unstable. So one thing I really like is the snowball method when it comes to paying off your debt. The snowball method is really just a psychological strategy to help you pay down the debt in a way that doesn't feel super overwhelming. When you're doing the snowball method, you can either start by paying off the smallest debt first. So if you have a credit card that's like if you have a Victoria's Secret credit card for 500 bucks, you can pay that off because it's like your smallest debt, instead of seeing all your debt at one time and getting super overwhelmed and discouraged and feeling like you're never going to pay it off. The snowball method helps you do it slowly, so that, or it just gives you some sort of strategy so that you can feel better about the how long it's going to take to pay off this debt. So you can either start with your smallest debt first, or you can start with your highest interest first and pay off the high interest debt before you and attack it that way. So you go from your highest interest to your lowest interest, or from your lowest debt to your highest debt, or you can go from your lowest interest, highest debt first, whichever one feels like it is the most easy for you to attack quickly. I would start with that one. And the more that you pay off your debt, even if it's just the unstable, like the credit cards, the consumer debt, paying off your car, if that's something that you can do, every time you do that, you get yourself in a better, more stable financial position. You reduce your stress, you increase your ability to flow creatively because you're reducing burden on yourself. So it just makes so much sense to get financially stable as quickly as possible. And even just the intention of getting financially stable as quickly as possible is going to do you so many wonders. So I highly recommend it. Now, after you've got your emergency fund, maybe you got it up to 1 month, 3 months. If you got it up to 6 months, you're really cooking with grease. You start paying off your debt. Now you're starting to get to a place where you really are cooking with grease, where you really are making some real big dents and real changes in your finances. And another strategy you can use to either pay off more debt or increase the amount of money that you just have to save, is to either decrease your expenses or increase your income. It's like two sides of the same coin. Our biggest expenses are our rent, our groceries, eating out. For me, it's Uber. That's a big one for me, whether it's Uber Eats or taking an actual Uber car, going places. These expenses tend to be the ones that are the highest for us as consumers. And if we are able to either change or reduce some of these expenses, and it can make a real big dent in your monthly available income or monthly money that you're able to allocate either to an emergency fund or to paying off debt, it makes a huge difference. And then if you're not able to decrease any of those, recurring expenses, another thing you can do is increase your income. And it feels like something, I feel like it's when I was at that point where I was really trying to pay off my debt, I really took any job. I would take any job that I could get. I took as many jobs as I could get, and that was the thing that really helped me to pay off my debt. Having the money to pay off those debts, to increase my savings. Your income is your greatest wealth builder. So you can choose to increase your income. It helps so much. When you can choose to increase your income, it can help a lot. And it's not just decreasing your expenses that's going to help. So that's your decreasing your expensive or increasing your income. That's step 3. And then the last step is to invest. Now, I don't recommend investing unless you are debt free. And I don't mean like little credit card debt that you pay off every month, like let's say you pay all of your expenses with your credit card. You're one of those people that likes credit card points, or you feel like it's easier to keep track of all your expenses because you put it on one card or something like that. And let's say your monthly expenses are like between $3,000 and $5,000. So every month you're paying off this credit card. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about if you have significant student loan debt, if you have significant, and I'm also not talking about a mortgage either, because mortgage is different than um, consumer debt and student loan debt. So if you have significant student loan debt or um, credit card debt, you're much better off paying those things off or paying them down significantly before you start investing, because investing money is money that should be when you the money that you use to invest is money that you should not need anytime soon. It's money that you can do without. It's not a part of your emergency fund. It's not a part of the money that you're using to pay off debt. It is money that you have sitting there that you are able to invest. And I feel like when people try to invest before they're ready, they put themselves in a really financially scary position because they could potentially need that money and they're not able to access it as quickly as they need to, because they wanted to, I guess, play the slot machine in the stock market. So I feel like unless you have the financial stability of a serious emergency fund, no real consumer debt, you're probably not in a place where you should be investing. Even if that means, and I don't even mean like if you have a regular 9 to 5 right now and you have a 401k that you can invest in, let put those do the minimum amount or do the maximum amount that you can put in your 401k. I still think that that's okay, because as far as I know, I think that's a tax write-off. It reduces your taxable income whenever you put your money in a 401k, or employee sponsored retirement fund. So those things are good, but that is not the same as your disposable income or income that needs to go towards paying off debt, like loan debt, like a car debt, like a credit card debt, that has high interest, that's tied to your credit, that, if that payment is missed, it could really, mess with your life. It could really ruin your credit. It can ruin your finances. You might have to, all of these negative things can happen if those debts aren't attended to. Then it means that you're probably not ready. You don't have the disposable income to start to invest. But to me, the great thing is that you don't need to invest in the actual stock market to feel rich. I think, first of all, like if you're uncomfortable or in any way, if you don't feel like you have the real knowledge to do it, it's probably not something that you need to be doing. And it's more stress than it's worth to go into it just because of FOMO. It's much more advantageous for you to pay off your debts, increase your emergency fund, and get yourself on good basic financial footing before starting to worry about whether or not you're missing out on gains in the stock market. Um, and the other thing is, investing, I feel, is about more than just investing in the stock market. I think especially as creatives, it's also about investing in ourselves, in our careers, in our skills, and building ourselves up and using the income that we have to invest in ourselves, whether that's in courses, whether that's like in hiring somebody to help you with something, or using that money to submit to film festivals or create your first film. Like these are huge, important investments in yourself and in your skills as a creative. And I think that they're super important. So these are my 4 steps to financial stability. I hope it was helpful, guys. I am going to end the live right now. This was my first live, so I really feel like um, I need to like figure out um, how I'm doing. I think I'm doing okay. I think I'm doing all right. Okay, I hope it was helpful. Until next time, get out there, get to work.